In order to understand continuity editing, let us briefly review the origin of theater. The exact origin of theater is debated among scholars. As we know it today, theater emerges out of myth, ritual, and ceremony dating as far back as ancient Egypt. This essay will focus on Eurocentric examples to understand the ideological implications embedded in filmmaking practice today. In ancient Greece, the theater or theatron constitutes a space where plays and performances are acted, or in contemporary times where motion pictures are shown. The first great tragic poets, like Sophocles and Euripides, situated actors according to the architecture of the theatron, or the open-air theater. Greek tragedy imbues a legacy in which scripts regarded as classics are reperformed and mass-produced. What remains is the instantiation of the theater as a common feature of the urban landscape. Furthermore, theater architecture informs spatial orientation in continuity editing. Take, for instance, the 180-degree rule. Imagine a line traversing the plane of the scene, commonly referred to as the axis of action. This rule dictates that cameras are situated along one of the vertices. A main camera could be placed here for a long or medium establishing shot. Additional cameras could be placed adjacent to cut back and forth following the dialogue. If these cameras traverse the axis, the room surrounding the characters will appear to have shifted, resulting in a less coherent viewing experience. This is considered a continuity error if it is not done in a creative or intentional way. Similar to the ancient tragedians, 19th century filmmaker Georges Méliès follows this tradition, drawing inspiration from classic novels of his era. It is speculated a French translation of H.G. Wells' First Men in the Moon provided a source of inspiration for the classic Voyage dans la Lune. The establishing shot in Voyage dans la Lune is derived from a fixed camera position orienting the viewer within the Société Astronomique. The studio, built in Montreuil, was modeled after a greenhouse to provide optimum lighting conditions matching the dimensions of the theater Robert Houdin. This example could be helpful in explaining how continuity editing constructs the frame and our understanding in the creation of meaning. The title scene in Hitchcock's Sabotage is twofold. First, it informs us of the film's title and alludes to narrative and potential conflict. A connotative reading situates the viewer inside the discursive framework of the producer, since the film is in English and the Georgia font is commonly observed in the Oxford Dictionary. The light bulb, as an establishing shot, situates the viewer after the inventions of Thomas Edison in the industrial era circa 1936. Similarly, the dark silhouette of Big Ben situates the viewer in London, England. The next shot orients the viewer in relation to the men investigating the scene of the crime and their position relative to the generator. In this example, the axis of action is consistently followed, orienting spatial and temporal relationships between the viewer and the subjects in the film. Nearly 30 years later, George Pal's Time Machine provides a stark comparison. The film's title credits appear in vivid Technicolor. The establishing shot of the chest where the device is stored shows significance and intrigue. A long shot is used to depict character position in relation to one another in George's study. In this scene, George is seated to the left of David. Here, Walter is standing to the right of George and David. Following the dialogue, edits occur as George, David, and Walter are speaking.
So that's why you've been in hiding, eh? That's very clever of you indeed.
I don't think George is referring to a new type of timepiece.
Throughout the scene, the background is consistent with the previous shots. Here again, the axis is consistently followed, building visual coherence in the mind of the viewer. Inconclusive, continuity techniques such as these emerged through the globalization and dissemination of the film industry spanning from Europe to the United States. Today, nations such as Europe and Hollywood assert themselves as the decider of taste and style, capable of establishing that which is considered classic.